tap in.
Hi, everyone. This is Carita Parks with Double Take Sports, and we're back for another NFL preview this week. Today, I have a very special guest, my friend and my family, Mr. Lake Lewis from SportsJourney. Thank you for joining me today.
What's going on, fam? How are you?
Doing well. Now, I had to have you on to look ahead to Washington versus Arizona. They're on the road this week. You are a Washington football insider, so you know this team very well. They pulled off a comeback win last week. And you, like I said, you've been covering them for a long time. What were some of your takeaways from last week?
I mean, the first thing was that they came back. I mean, how many times, Carita, you've been in that stadium with me? How many times did we look at each other in that press box when things started to go south?
Right.
And you just knew how bad it was going to get. You knew the bottom was going to fall completely out. So for, the fact that they came back, I mean, how impressive is that? I will say this. I think that may have been a blessing in disguise that there were no fans in the stands, because in years past, like I said, one bad thing happens, the crowd loses energy, and then you hear the booing, and it just didn't look good. But they're a young team. They're hungry. They're exciting to watch on both sides of the ball, believe it or not. And I think that they have something that they can build on. So I'm excited about them.
Yeah, you mentioned the fans. So I was on Twitter, and they were like, "Oh, the same old Washington." So you're right about
I said that too.
If they were in the stands, it would have been a different story. But it was good to see them come back and fight. And speaking of the young talent, Chase Young, his debut, we've been talking about him all offseason since the draft. 1.5 sacks. What was most impressive about his start last week?
Well, I mean, where do you start? I mean, the guy was, I'm sitting there, Carita, and I was looking around, people were 6 feet apart from me, obviously, but I was looking around and people were just, they had that look on their face like, are we really seeing what we think we're seeing? And what we were seeing was Washington finally having a transcendent player a la Sean Taylor. Mm-hmm. And I think when you go back to Sean Taylor, he was one of those defensive players that coordinators game plan for. Players on the field kept their heads on swivels. They wanted to know where he was at all times. And I think Chase Young fits that mold. I mean, obviously different positions. But if you're a quarterback in the NFL that's going to play Washington, you're looking to see where he is. Where's 99? Where is he going to be on the field? Because he's wreaking havoc. And that was just his first pro game. I mean, imagine once he really figures this thing out, how scary it's going to be.
Exactly. And, I can't talk about the defense without mentioning Ryan Kerrigan. And to me, and you can weigh in on this, like, when Ryan came in, I felt like he gave the defense a spark. Like, they had a couple of penalties. He came in, he got that sack. Did you see the same thing?
Absolutely. What I saw was a player that, has familiarity with different looks. Mm-hmm. A guy that knew some tendencies of, Jason Peters, excuse me, on one side, Lane Johnson was out for the game.
Right.
And, you saw him come in, and I don't know if maybe the Eagles, took their foot off the gas, worrying about Ryan Kerrigan, maybe thinking, Montez Sweat and Chase Young are the two young guys. Yeah. But don't forget about the old man who still has a lot of tricks in his bag. And you saw that. I mean, he was the NFC Player of the Week after having those 2 sacks. So, again, let's be fair to Ryan here. Not only is he the all-time sack king for Washington in their history, broke that last week, breaking Dexter Manley's record. But let's be fair to Ryan Kerrigan. Has he ever had a bookend on the other side of him, really? He hasn't. And now Montez Sweat showed last year what he could do. Yeah. Now you get this man-child in Chase Young, and you put those 2 guys with Kerrigan.
Man-child.
I mean, it's about to get ignorant. It really is, and I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. It was exciting to see them just in game 1. So like you said, as the season goes on, I can't imagine what those guys are going to do, and I'm looking forward to seeing it too. Now, that defense has another test coming up. They're headed to Arizona to see Kyler Murray and crew. Kyler had a great game last week against San Francisco. He threw about 230 yards, and he rushed for 90 yards. Kyler's a lot more elusive than Carson Wentz. So how do you think the defense can contain him?
It's going to be tough. Kyler Murray to me is Michael Vick Jr. I know a lot of people say, well, what about Lamar Jackson? Lamar Jackson's Lamar Jackson.
Right.
We've never seen anything like Lamar Jackson. But Kyler Murray reminds me of more of a diminutive version of Michael Vick, where he can just do so many things. I mean, he's a pure passer on top of that. More so than Lamar Jackson. I mean, he's a pure pocket passer that has incredible, mobility and can get out and make things happen with his legs. So for Washington's defense, this is a great matchup, that offense against this defense. They're going to have to contain him. I mean, you can't let him get out in space because that's when he makes things happen. And as I said, he's a smaller guy, not so much in weight. He's definitely got muscle and things like that, but, he's short. And you want to be able to come at him. You want to be able to get the Kerrigans and Chase Youngs and Sweats and all the guys on that D-line. You want to put a body on him. Even if he gets the ball away, as long as it's not an unnecessary penalty or a late hit, you do want to knock him down. You want him to feel your presence at all times, and then hopefully as the game progresses, he wears down a little bit because, he's a special player. He's clearly reason why he was a number one pick last year. I mean, you can see it, and they're dangerous. The Cardinals are dangerous for sure.
They are number one pick and offensive player of the year. So speaking of danger, another weapon they have picked up DeAndre Hopkins in the offseason. He had a career debut, 14 catches. What kind of challenge is he going to be for Washington secondary?
I mean, I'm still mad about, the fact that Bill O'Brien, a former Penn State coach, I got shout my school out on every set. I'm still upset with why he would get rid of him. I mean, you and me, Carita, could play Monopoly, and I still would have more value getting from you than what they gave away for DeAndre Hopkins. That was terrible.
Makes no sense.
And I was really wondering how he would fit in. Don't get me wrong. I know he's great. We know he's great, and I knew he would do well.
Well, we've only seen him with the Texans.
Right, but on top of that, you have Larry Fitzgerald there. They have some other talent as well. And he goes in his first game and gets 15 catches. I mean, that's just – if this guy isn't the best receiver in football, I don't know who is. And I've been saying it for a long time. There's Julio Jones with the size and all these other guys that do, Antonio Brown when he was in had the speed and everything. DeAndre Hopkins is a mold of everyone. He does everything. And the thing he might do better than anybody else is he doesn't drop anything within a 2 feet radius of him. That's going to be something that Washington's defenders are going to have to keep in mind, is that if it's a 50-50 ball, he wins them. Right. Normally like 90-10, he wins. So it's going to be interesting to see who they pair up against him. I know Kendall Fuller practiced, this week. It was a little limited yesterday, but I think he's going to play and give it a shot. And I think, it's going to be interesting to see if they put him on DeAndre Hopkins. Do they put Fabian Moreau on him? I would go probably with Fabian because Fabian is a little bit more grabby, more physical, and he's bigger. So we'll see how this plays out. I'm just excited. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, that would be an exciting matchup there with DeAndre, who, like you said, whoever they end up putting against him. Now let's switch over to the offense.
Okay.
They got off to a little bit of a slow start last week. They did find their groove, and they were able to capitalize off of those defensive turnovers and essentially win the game. What do you want to see them do differently this week?
I mean, they have to start fast. That's the key. I think Dwayne Haskins in particular has to start fast. Every game that he's played, and you go back and you look at the tape, the first quarter, it's been a little slow process for him, to get going. Last year, I'm going to give him a pass because it was putrid play calling. That's just hurt him. His development was stunted too. So later in the year, that Giants game, I go back to the Giants game last year, the game he actually got hurt in, it just seemed like the light bulb had come on and everything he was doing was going great. It looked like he and Daniel Jones that day were going to have an epic battle.
I remember that game.
Exactly. So he got hurt. So we didn't see it. We had to go into this offseason with a lot of question marks, but he's lost weight. He's come back in really great shape. He's taken the leadership mantle, by the horns. He's really embraced that role on the team, and he's a captain. I just think that fans have to keep in mind too, this is a young offense. You know, they don't have a whole lot of playmakers. They have a lot of talent, but they haven't yet found that number two. Kelvin Harmon, I think, who we all thought was going to be the number two, is injured out for the year with an ACL tear. So now you're trying to find another complement. I thought Dontrell Inman did well last week. I thought he played okay. But the two guys that I'm interested to see, Carita, how they develop a little bit further down the line. Isaiah Wright's on the practice squad. That's a big man to be playing wide receiver. And he's got some speed, nice hands. He came from Temple. So it's interesting to see if they bring him up from the practice squad. I think they'll probably do that sooner than later. And then, of course, Antonio Golden Gandy from Liberty. He's a guy that I think you're going to see this Sunday or be able to do some things out on the field. He's another big target that they could utilize. So if they can get some more contributions from a number two, because we all know Steven Sims Jr. is entrenched as their number three in the slot, then the offense will open up. I mean, they're still trying to develop a tight end as well. Logan Thomas played well last week, had their first touchdown of the year. But, these are all guys that are still feeling their way in the NFL. And I think in fairness to Dwayne Haskins, before fans pile on him and say he's not throwing for 300, Ron Rivera doesn't need Dwayne Haskins to be the Ohio State version of Dwayne Haskins. Even when Cam Newton won that MVP in Carolina, he wasn't throwing for over 300 yards. It was a little bit of everything. He was a great game managing guy that could make plays when he had to.
And don't
That's
turn
all.
the ball over.
Exactly. Don't turn the ball over. I'm going to say it again. People are getting so mad at me for saying this, Carita, because I tweeted it out. But Dwayne Haskins hasn't had an interception in his last 3 starts. So this could be, if he gets through this game, it'll be his 4th start. That's all you want from your quarterback. Don't turn the ball over. Make plays when you had to. Last week they scored 2 touchdowns when they had a short field. What more do you want from them?
Right. And to be fair, there's quarterbacks all over the league who just have to be game managers and don't get that same criticism. So I think we do, like you said, have to let him continue to grow, because he only played, I think it was 6 or 7 games last season.
Exactly. 6 games. And let me ask you, Carita, in fairness, would you say Drew Brees is a game manager, or would you say Tom Brady in New England was a game manager?
Ooh, that is a really good question. I think I'm going to go with Drew Brees as the game manager.
See, to me, I would go with Tom Brady. I would say that Tom Brady is the one that makes the high percentage passes, not a whole lot of gambling, because the offense was tailor-made to always hit the open guy underneath. So to me, that's, just don't turn the ball over.
Yeah.
Last week against the Saints, what did we see? We saw a pick 6 when he was trying to make some things happen. Those weren't throws that he was making in New England. So this isn't, knocking Dwayne, because I think he does have a big arm. He can make all the throws. But I just don't think in this offense they're going to want him to throw for 400 yards. That means something's not working offensively, a la the running game.
Right. Well, I'm glad you brought up the running game, because I was going to go there next. Now, on Arizona's side, their linebacker, Isaiah Simmons, he struggled last week. He got burned by Raheem Mostert from the 49ers. Do you think that Washington's going to take advantage of that weakness?
Oh, yeah. They're definitely going to try to exploit that. I mean, but in fairness to Isaiah Simmons, he's going to be a great player. I mean, he's a tremendous talent, a guy that big and that fast and athletic to be playing. He could play linebacker. He could play hybrid safety. He did everything when he was at Clemson. And Mostert's no slouch either, by the way,
not at all.
For San Francisco.
That was definitely a huge test.
Again, Gibson, here, the rookie Gibson, Antonio Gibson from Memphis. I mean, he's a fast, big back himself. And he didn't have his his coming out game, so to speak, last week. His first game as a rookie. I think it was a little bit of combination of the offensive line, the early play calling. So it just wasn't clicking for the running game in that department. And hence, that's why you saw Peyton Barber, who's the veteran of the group, be able to come in and do a little bit more, probably, just from experience. If he didn't see a hole, he probably knew what to take. Exactly. But I think you're going to see Gibson have a better game, a much better game, actually, this week. as do I see J.D. McKissick as well having a nice game.
Yeah, it'll definitely be good to see that run game get going because, they have flashes, but it would be nice to see them once again start a little faster with that. So I want to ask you now, before we get into predictions, who do you think is going to stand out in Washington's matchup against Arizona
This is a you're trying to kind of give me a trap question here, Carita, but
I really wasn't.
I think two guys are going to stand out, and ironically, it may not be who you think one of them because of who's going to be going up against him. But I think Terry McLaurin's going to have a big game, and some people are like, "What are you talking about? He's going to have Patrick Peterson on him like 95% of the time." But one thing I noticed about Terry last year, he's a gamer. And he's a guy that, you were in our conferences and you saw him, heard him say that he wants to be a dominant receiver and he wants to be a difference maker. He wants to be great. And these are the type of games that if you make those comments, you have to pencil these games against the elite corners in football to prove just that. So I think you're going to get an A-plus game from Terry on Sunday because I think that he's primed to show people, hey, I can really be a long-term solution at number one for this team. So if he has a big game, then guess who else has a big game too? Dwayne Haskins. Because somebody has to get him the ball. Exactly. So I think those two guys are going to have really nice games, and they may be the ultimate difference makers in this contest. Naturally, the defense, they may give up a little bit, but they're going to also take some. So when they do have the opportunities for their turnovers that they create, Washington's offense is going to have to do what they did last week, and that's move the ball and score. And, I think that's ultimately going to be the telltale sign of this game.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. I think the offense knows that they need to get off to a faster start, and I believe Dwayne's up for the challenge. And like you said, Terry McLaurin, even last season when he was doing well, it still wasn't good enough. And that's the kind of mentality you have to keep getting better.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I mean, they're young guys. They're hungry. I'm sure they're tired of hearing, that the offense is the weak link of this team and that they aren't that good. Because if you go back to last year, with minimal opportunity, Dwayne Haskins was showing that he can move the ball up and down the field. It's just a matter of getting him in a rhythm. And you go back to last Sunday against the Eagles, Scott Turner went to a no huddle, kind of a hurry up, and it worked because let's face it, that's what these young quarterbacks run in college. That's what he ran. Dwayne Haskins ran at Ohio State, and he ran it locally in high school at Bullis. So this is what they're used to doing. And if you can start the game like that tomorrow, which wouldn't surprise me, hopefully I'm not tipping anything, but I would expect to see them do a lot of no huddle early and often in tomorrow's game.
Well, they seem to be making adjustments, which is something that we didn't see much of last season. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see them shift to that since it was working.
Right. Exactly.
Now, I heard your prediction already, but I'm going to ask you again. Right. You say it twice.
Right. Oh.
What is your prediction for the outcome of Washington versus Arizona?
Hey, I'm still sticking to it. 1-0 on the year. Got the big W last week against the Eagles. I'm taking Washington again. People say, that's because you cover them. We're in the market. You guys have to do this. No, we don't. But I do think that, they're a team that's, a lot of the naysayers had written them off, had left them for dead before the season even started. And now you're starting to say, this defense had a really nice game last week. They're only going to get better. Well, guess what? The offense practices against that defense every day. So they're going up against one of the better units in football. They should be marked improved this week from last week. So I'm taking Washington 24-23, close one. Probably comes down to a game-winning field goal. I'm going to give my man Dustin D. Hopkins, my guy. I think he'll get it done.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm not going to lie. Last week I did bet against Washington only because I knew they were coming into a new system and there was no preseason. So I thought they would struggle a little more, but I was pleasantly surprised. But I am not betting against them this week.
Yeah, one thing about last week I kept telling people, the Eagles were the team that had all the game tape. Washington didn't. I mean, they had so many young players, new system, new everything. So unless you were studying Carolina, and it wouldn't have been fair to study Carolina with Christian McCaffrey as the back, because there's no Christian McCaffrey here. So, the Eagles, I think, were caught a little bit off guard with certain things in the second half. And that's a sign of good coaching, because there were some adjustments made, which is something that we haven't seen around these parts in a long time. So it was good to see some coaches go into the locker room, do some things differently, and it worked in the second half, and it propelled them to a big opening day victory. Hopefully they can do the same thing on Sunday.
And stay on top of the division.
Yes, 2 straight weeks, undisputed, undefeated. Well, you can't go further than that, because that's when you go heavyweight champion of the world. We can't do that.
We got to wait for that. Well, before I let you go, I have to ask you about a tweet that I saw recently, where you were lobbying for Washington to potentially save the football team. I'd love to hear your rationale on that.
It's simple. Nobody else has it. Carita, you know how we do things. We don't like to be like anybody else. We're comfortable in our own skin doing our own things. And I think this name is catchy. I do. I mean, you can still come up with a logo, or a mascot, but you can still keep that name. I'm kind of digging the W right now that's being pushed around on everything. Actually, I think they should take that NFL shield off the middle of the field and put the W down on there, and then that stadium and field would be complete. I kind of like Washington football team, and maybe you can't say the name, but you could put formerly known as.
I mean, people make fun of it, but they're talking about it, which you want people to talk about your name. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they kept it, because when they first announced it, they were pushing merchandise, and, they have shirts. I saw emblems on chairs. So this might be a pilot to kind of test the name.
Of course. I mean, you're the marketing guru, and you know that. And I was saying the same thing. Why would you put that all over the stadium, redo this whole field up, paint in the building? The stadium looked like a Super Bowl stadium last week. I kid you not. Yeah. It was incredible. But you're changing things around your facility. I mean, you don't spend a whole lot of money if you don't need to, right?
Yeah. It's a lot for a typical name. So
I kind of have a feeling it could stay. Keep that W. I think a lot of fans, you and I like it. A lot of fans, I think, like it as well. So listen, if they win this year, if this team somehow, some way can defeat all odds and make the playoffs, I mean, I know it's way down the road, but just hypotheticals. Yeah, but just hypotheticals. If they did do that, oh my goodness, they're going to have to keep that the way it is, because people are superstitious.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw Kevin Durant's tweet. It was just after they won the football team. That's what he tweeted. So we'll see.
It's sticking with people. It is. So I like it. I think it has a chance to stay, and we'll see.
I think you're on to something. Well, ladies, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you coming through, as always. Tell the people where they can find you, how to follow you, and if there's any parting words, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, just, you can check us out, myself and the lovely Carita Parks on SportsJourney as well. And I do want to tell you, I'm so proud of you, for starting your platform as well. And a couple of people were like, is Carita not with you guys? And I'm like, of course she is. I said, but, and you remember, I told you a long time ago, you don't grow from subtraction. You just, you're doing something that was in your heart, and I'm very supportive, and you're doing a great job with it. So, you just keep doing that. But yeah, she's still with us at SportsJourney. And, you can follow us at sportsjourney.com. You can follow us on social media at sportsjourney.com. And then you can follow me on social media. Anything's Lake Lewis Jr. Make sure you put Junior after that, though.
Yes. And I can't close this out without saying, so for those who don't know, I cover the Mystics and the Wizards for SportsJourney. And Lake has been very instrumental. I don't know if I've ever said this to you, but you've been very instrumental in my growth. I appreciate all of your advice and support, like you said, because you just don't always get that. So I appreciate it, and I want the people to hear it and know it.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, but you know how I do stuff. My thing is, I'm the one that should be thanking people because I picked a strong group and I have a good group of people that are, one, they're loyal, they're decent people. And, those are the people, that I consider my family. You guys are my friends and family. So probably more so than my actual, family, well, I got to shout my sister out, of course,
Oh, yeah.
but,
But she's
you know,
here with us.
of course, daughter and all that, but no, I mean, you guys are good people and you guys have made me look good. So I always say, as I go, you go, and vice versa. And we're going now. So we don't need anybody's help. We still do our own thing.
Yes. All right. Well, thanks, Lake. Like once again, I appreciate you joining me.
All right. Have a good weekend. Hopefully come Monday, we can be talking about 2-0 for this team.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Take care now.
Thank you.